Hey guys, how are you all? Today I am going to recap The Last Man on Earth Series 1, hope you like it. So this story begins with a mysterious virus that kills everyone, but Phil Miller is the last man left on Earth. He is lonely for the last 1 year, and he roams all over America in search of alive people. He goes to every city in every state and cross-marks the empty cities, but wherever he goes he steals popular paintings and expensive things, and because of such empty cities, the entire map is filled with cross marks. And when he can't find any humans, he decides to return to his hometown of Tucson. After this, he writes "Alive in Tucson" on every big board in the last hope, so that if someone passes in front of the boards, then seeing this message, Tucson can come to him. Phil declares the most luxurious house in his town as his palace, and decorates all the stolen paintings and furnishings in his house. Next we see that he remembers his family, and at night he apologizes to God for his bad deeds. And he prays to God that some beautiful girl wanders away and comes to Tucson. Next day we see him go to the supermarket in his underwear. He break the glass with his pistol and walk in. In just 1 year he forgets human ways, because he knows there is no one to see him, and Phil does everything the bachelor boys think of doing in their dreams, like unnecessarily sabotaging store items, stealing expensive wine bottles, and taking home a lot of adult magazines. On the other hand, we see that he plays alone with himself to overcome his loneliness, in which he sabotages expensive things and blasts luxury cars with each other. This kind of madness helps him deal with loneliness. A few days later his birthday comes, and he celebrates his birthday alone. He gets emotional remembering his family, how he used to celebrate his birthday with everyone and how happily everyone lived. He was fed up with his loneliness, and he prayed to God every night that he wished some beautiful girl would come to him. And on seeing this, 5 months pass by. Now the luxury house Phil lived in is now turned into a garbage dump. It was never cleaned, because he thinks it's no use doing all this. Been many days since he bathed, and now he's living like an animal. He bathes and drinks in a small swimming pool filled with alcohol, and because of the lack of water in the house, he cuts a wooden ply and puts it in the swimming pool and uses it as a bathroom, just like a small child. Then one day he goes to the bar of his choice, and makes it his second destination. There he makes a face on the ball and gives them different names. He talks to them as if he is his close friend, all this so that he feels that he is not alone. And every night he keeps staring at a statue of a girl. Phil all the time thinks of romancing her. Further we see that he goes to that statue after some time and talks to her. It seems he shares the feeling of his heart with the statue and starts kissing him after some time. Then the hand of the girl's statue breaks and the same heart of our Phil also breaks. Phil is now fed up with his lonely life and decides to commit suicide, and he thanks all his boyfriends for spending their time with him, saying that he will always be in his heart. Phil then gets in his car, and gets out of his car to make an accident on the big stone in front. And just as he is about to hit the stone, he sees that in the sky black smoke is visible, seeing which he feels that there must be a person there, after which he sits in his car and leaves fast towards that side. And as soon as he reaches there, he gets such a surprise which he was eagerly waiting for, a girl's bra, which someone had put to dry in the sun, seeing whom Phil gets emotional with happiness and starts smelling that bra. Phil is so surprised when the girl is present there that he faints there. And he sees she's in the arms of some pretty girl, who is overjoyed to see it, and she kisses it. And that's when Phil really comes to his senses, and he find out that he was dreaming, because the girl in front was not that beautiful and she older than him, who was giving it CPR because he thought Phil was dying. He immediately turns away from her, and asks her about the pretty girls, while the girl's name is Carol, and she says that she should first think about her wet pants. But Phil says that he did not wet it, and he starts walking towards rudely. And then Carol takes out her revolver and aim it at Phil, after which Phil accepts that he had wet the pants. On the other hand, the two return to normal after some time, and Carol tells her that she has come here after seeing the Alive in Tucson sign. But Phil was not happy with her arrival. For some time they talk among themselves. After that they go to a supermarket in their car to have food. When they arrive at the supermarket, Phil parks the car at the handicapped's place. But Carol overpowers him and tells them to follow the rules. But Phil explains to her that the entire space is empty for the disabled. But Carol does not agree with him, and then Phil angrily enters the supermarket with his car. Phil then brings Carol to show him his house, but she is shocked to see his house, because there is a pile of garbage everywhere in that house, and Phil had made the swimming pool of that house completely dirty by using it as a bathroom. And Carol accuses him of stealing the painting, and she asks him about the many magazines he has lying around. Phil simply states that all the magazines are Adults he watches for his own entertainment. After Phil tells her to go back to the place he brought her with him, the next day Phil sees Carol cleaning his house, on which Phil gets angry and says that one should not clean anyone's house without permission. After this, at night he goes to his bar and complains to his friends about Carol. He thinks that Carol is his wife and she is taking possession of him. Next day Carol comes to stay near Phil's house, but then Phil comes there and asks him to go somewhere else. But Carol does not agree. Then Phil takes off his pants so that he gets angry and leaves from there, but Carol does not mind it, because she thinks that God has chosen both of them for human development, but Phil says that he will never have a physical relationship with her even if she is the last woman in the world. A short time later, Carol comes to Phil's house when he is at his swimming pool, and Carol asks Phil to help him for supply water to his house, so that he can grow fresh vegetables to eat. But when Phil refuses to help her, Carol tries to tease him by eating fresh tomato, but Phil doesn't mind it. After that, Phil goes to Carol's garden the same night and secretly eats her whole tomatoes. The next day, Carol comes to Phil's house and she asks him about his tomatoes, but Phil flatly refuses to touch her tomatoes. But then Phil notices that Carol injures her leg while trying to supply water to her house, and a few days later she quits her normal routine, and she uses her swimming pool as a bathroom. Just like Phil, she has now given up, because she feels that her life has no meaning. She is not capable of furthering human development, because she is unable to even supply water to her garden, and this thing hits Phil's heart, and he goes to the city's water tank on the same day, and completes the work of supplying water to Carol's house. Further in this romantic scene we see that Carol becomes very happy to see all this, and she invites Phil to dinner at night. Phil then goes to Carol's house for dinner, and at dinner these people enjoy eating fresh vegetables, and Phil tells Carol that he is ready to have a physical relationship with her. But Carol says she doesn't want to do all this before the wedding, at which Phil proposes Carol for marriage and Carol accepts his proposal. On the other hand, we see that they are both doing the wedding ceremony, and Phil was not happy for this. After this, both of them start going out of the church, and as soon as they leave outside the church, there are many people who congratulate them. But Phil is terrified when he sees them and he screams loudly. Then he realizes that he was dreaming, and he looks outside and confirms whether someone is really alive or it was just a dream. But there was silence far and wide, after which he was relaxed. As we see next, Carol comes to Phil's house, and she makes a special dish for Phil to eat, and she gives him a walkie-talkie to talk to, and she also asks Phil to get the marriage ring, and Phil says yes to bring the ring. The next day Carol goes to the supermarket to prepare for the wedding, where she goes to pick up decorations and cakes, and Phil celebrates the bachelor party with his friends, where he burns the girls' wigs with fire, and the rest of the necessities sets things on fire and ruins them, and he proudly says that this is my best bachelor party. And he also goes to that female statue that he used to stare at every night and thinks her as his girlfriend. Phil tells him that I and you were together till now, and now he is going to be someone else, but she will always be remembered in his heart. After that they go to church, and now finally it's time for both of them to get married, and Carol is overjoyed, but Phil sees no joy, and when it comes time to put on the ring, it is revealed that Phil forgot to bring his ring. And Carol is deeply hurt when she sees this, and it seems to her that she was so upset for marriage in vain alone, while Phil is not interested in it, nor does he have any pleasure, after which Carol gets angry and leaves from there, at which Phil feels very bad for Carol, and he decides to persuade her. Phil then goes to Carol's house and he tries to persuade her. He even says sorry to her, but Carol doesn't open the door, after which Phil breaks through her gate with a hammer and walks in, and as soon as he comes in, Phil sees that Carol has made very lovely decorations for him, and he has also made a very beautiful and big cake, seeing which Phil cannot stop and he tests that cake. That's when he learns that the cake is not sweet, but spicy, and seeing this, Phil falls in love with Carol and he thinks that Carol is so naive and innocent. After this, Phil goes to Carol and he apologizes to her for her mistake. He explains to Carol that today he is deeply ashamed of what he has done, and he has come to take her home with him, and seeing this, Carol innocently agrees, after which he takes Carol to a large jewelry shop, where he gives her a lot of rings of her favorite, after which they both go to church and Phil marries Carol. After that, Phil in his house sitting down and eats the cake. But then Carol comes there and she invites him to the bedroom to increase the population, where these people make physical relations. But Phil still feels uncomfortable with Carol. The next day both the couples play games together, and Carol does everything that Phil enjoys doing. She rides a bulldozer on a beer bottle, plays with Phil with fire, and Carol also goes to the statue that Phil used to stare before Carol, and Carol starts hitting that statue like a possessive wife because she was her husband's ex-girlfriend, and Phil feels so good seeing this. He thinks he did a great job marrying Carol and that she will always make him happy. And just as he drives his car to go home, he hits a limousine at the junction. Just then Phil gets out of his car in surprise and he goes to see the car he hit, but then a very beautiful girl comes out of that car, which Phil is shocked to see, and he keeps looking at her. Seeing that girl, the guitar starts playing in Phil's heart, and he starts to regret a lot that he has done the marriage too early, and he starts loving that beauty in his heart. And with this romantic scene, episode 1 and 2 ends here. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next episode. Take care.